Hey, Bill, I'm in the mood for a switch up. I hit the function, hit the rose till I hiccup. I hit the stage and leave with money that's a stick up. She picture perfect, so I told him I'm a flick up. Bill, I'm in the mood for a change up. I leave the city and return with my change up. They got amnesia, don't remember how they played us. They wanna knock me down, but somehow I...
So my entire family is known for being wild and crazy, and no one is more wilder and crazy than my Aunt Bootsy. You know how as a kid during Thanksgiving dinner, there's the adult table and the kids table. Well, the kids used to sit in the kitchen, and everyone else sitting in the dining room. But I always sat closest to the dining room door so I could hear the shit that came out of my Aunt Boosie's mouth. Wild, crazy stuff. The woman owned an illegal gambling spot, a car wash, all kinds of stuff. I remember one Thanksgiving, my grandfather was telling a story about him taking Aunt Bootsy hog hunting. They search all day for hogs. And when they finally find some, she doesn't want him to kill them because she likes them. He tries to explain to her that these hogs are food, and if given a chance, they would run her over and stab her with their tusks. But she was fearless, even at 11 years old. Takes off running into the field after the hogs, but he's freaking out because one of them is making a beeline running straight for her. And he can't get a shot on the hog because she's in the way. I distinctly remember my grandfather and everyone else at the table laughing as he explained that she stood there screaming at a 250-pound hog, telling it to stop running at her. And the hog stopped. He said in all of his years of hunting, he never ever saw anything like it. Now, as it slowed down and came to a stop, he repositioned, shot it, and killed it because he didn't want his daughter to get hurt. But she was pissed off and didn't speak to him for weeks after that. But that was my Aunt Bootsy. She was fearless, with a sprinkle of crazy. So when I heard the story about her and Dogman from her ex-boyfriend Glenn, I had no doubt it was real. Because that's just the type of person Bootsy is. She never allowed herself to be intimidated by anything. And around where we live in Lamar, Arkansas, she's known as Crazy Bootsy. So she starts dating this biker guy named Glenn. Glenn and his boys grow marijuana somewhere off in the Ozark National Forest. Now, my auntie is splitting her time between the illegal gambling and the growing fields with Glenn. One day, the two of them are up there in the forest waiting on his other biker friends to come in and switch out. They've been smoking weed all day, high as a kite, and start to see things moving in the woods. Now, according to Glenn, the biker gang had gotten word that the authorities were on to the fact that they were growing weed. So paranoia kicks in, and the two of them are thinking it's the cops, so they haul out of there. And that's him. And my Aunt Bootsy are running away. They can tell they're being followed. Again, they're thinking it's the police. So Glenn tells her that they need to split up. That way he can take the charges and she can get away. So Glenn splits off, runs away into the woods and starts shooting his gun in the air to get the attention of what he thought were the cops. According to Glenn, he ran for about 10 minutes. And when he stopped to catch his breath, he realized that this ain't the cops. Because the cops don't growl at you, they shoot at you. So now, he's reloading his gun and scanning the woods. And let me pause right here in the story and explain something to you for a moment. You see, Glenn was the real deal. A real biker gang member, convicted felon. He ain't supposed to have no gun. Imagine the scene. He's looking around, trying to see where the growling is coming from, and thinks he sees this head behind the brush. But if the head that he's seeing with his two eyes is right, then there's nothing right about it, if you know what I mean. So now he starts to work his way back in the direction of my Aunt Bootsy, because he's worried about it. And that's when what he described as a jet black walking hyena steps out of the brush. And I will never ever forget the look on Glenn's face as the next words came out of his mouth. He says, "Man, I've been in a lot of shootouts, fights. I've been stabbed in prison, beaten to inches of my life. And I've never been more afraid than I was at that moment in time looking at this monster." So he takes off running, looking back over his shoulder. It's disappeared. Again, he stops to catch his breath and realizes that this thing is so fast that it's ran past him, flanked him, and cut him off. So he shoots in the air trying to scare it. But it's there, in the brush, just watching him. Now understand, Glenn is standing there looking at this thing in the brush, not knowing what the hell to do, understanding that there's no way he can outrun it. And that's when Aunt Bootsy comes out of nowhere, walking down on it, shooting at it, saying, "You had me doing all this goddamn running because of this werewolf looking." She empties a magazine in this thing's direction, reloads, and starts shooting again, talking her face beat red. When I asked Glenn why in the hell would my auntie do something like this, he said that she was pissed because it made her afraid and that it ran off. And as for him, he stood there speechless, in shock, and watched the whole situation unfold. And get this, when it's all said and done, Glenn wanted to leave the woods right then and there, but she insisted that they go back to the growing field and stay there and wait until the people that they were waiting on arrived at the grow site. Now, after Glenn told me the story, I found it 100% believable, because I know how crazy my Aunt Boosie is. But I decided to ask her about it. And after beating around the bush a bit, I get the question out, so did this really happen? And she says, hell yeah, it happened. And a few days later, it came back, ran a bunch of bikers out of the woods, but her and Glenn could go back anytime they wanted to. And even though there was times that it was in the area, it didn't bother them. According to my Aunt Boosie, all animals are the same. They measure risk and reward. If they know you're going to kill them and they're cornered, they'll fight to the death. But if you mind your business and leave them alone, they'll leave you alone. She figured it came out to check on them to see what was going on, and when they ran thinking it was the police, it triggered the predator instincts in this animal. And then the minute she realized what it was, she treated it like any other animal. Inflicted some pain. And in her own words, she said, "I made that make a decision. You want to eat me? This is what it's going to cost you. Lead."